Now, you may very well be wondering why it is that I keep going on about the different types of meditation and how some meditations are better than others at bringing about the end result of liberation from samsara, and why on earth I don't just teach you how to meditate. In fact, I suspect there are some people out there who think the reason why I'm not teaching you how to meditate is because I don't know how to meditate myself. Now, if you do feel that way, then I suggest it's because you don't appreciate the difference between placement meditation and insight meditation. Now, first you have to understand that this placement meditation is something that is common to basically all spiritual traditions. The Christians do it, the Hindus do it, everybody does it. But this insight meditation is something specific to the Buddha Dharma. Now, I do have some doubts here whether or not the Kashmir Shaivik tradition engages in insight meditation, but unfortunately I don't know enough about this tradition to give an informed opinion on this matter. But to put it simply, then if this Kashmir Shaivik tradition does insight meditation, then it must conform to the 4 seals that signify the true Dharma. And if they do, then that would mean that they are included within what is called the Buddhist tradition. There is an important point here, and that's because this placement meditation is something that basically anybody can teach. Even a small child can teach placement meditation. In fact, in our meditation retreat in Nepal, we have 5-year-olds who are capable of teaching you placement meditation. So it's something very easy to do. And in fact, in the Tibetan tradition anyway, then we consider this placement meditation to be a kind of stilling or mindfulness practice and not actual meditation itself. And so what is the difference between placement meditation and insight meditation? Well, insight meditation does not depend upon placing the mind on a particular object. Insight meditation is what is called recognition. And so basically it's recognition of the true nature of phenomena. So then you could say, well, just tell us what the true nature of phenomena is, and then we'll meditate on that. So if we want to understand what this ultimate object of meditation is, then we have to look or refer to the words of the Buddha. When the Buddha became enlightened at the Vajra seat in Dorje Den, or Bodh Gaya in Bihar in India, then he made a proclamation. And by this we can see what it is he discovered through his long search on the spiritual path. So this comes from the Lalita Vistara Sutra. Something you should understand here is that this sutra is not accepted in the Theravadan tradition and does not appear in the Pali Canon. This is what we call a Mahayana Sutra. So there will be some disagreement on whether these are actual and valid words of the Buddha. But within the Tibetan tradition anyway, we see these words to be highly significant. And the Buddha described his enlightenment in this way: profound and peaceful, free from elaboration, luminous clarity, and uncompounded. So we could look at these words and we could say to ourselves, well, why can't we meditate on this? Would that not be insight meditation? We could meditate on profundity. Likewise, we could meditate on peace, etc. And so if this is a description of the true nature of reality, then if we meditate on this, then we must be meditating on insight, meditating on understanding the true nature of reality. So let's take this first one, profound. So I could say to you, the microtubules are the only structures within the neurons in the brain that are capable of orchestrating quantum processes called objective reduction. And you could say, wow, that's profound. I'm going to meditate on that. The problem here is we don't really understand what that means, in exactly the same way that we don't understand these words of the Buddha, his declaration of enlightenment. And further, we could meditate on this feeling of peace. So would that not be insight meditation? We understand what this feeling of peace is, right? We identify it when it arises to mind. So why don't we meditate on that? Well, meditating on a feeling of peace in the mind is meditating on a feeling. And a feeling is an appearance. Now, if the true nature of phenomena was a specific appearance, that would mean that all appearances would have to have this as their essential nature. For example, if you were feeling extremely hectic and worked up, upset or angry, then the true nature of that must be this feeling of peace. If this feeling of peace itself is the true nature of phenomena. So you see here that we don't actually understand what this means. We can give rise to feelings of joy, we can give rise to feelings of anger, but these feelings themselves are mere appearances. These feelings themselves are not what we're looking for. This is not the understanding we need. This insight or understanding means that there are no longer any doubts about the true nature of phenomena. And then, if we had this insight, we would be able to see how these words of the Buddha perfectly match the experience of enlightenment. The thing we have to understand is that these kind of feelings of peace and well-being and clarity, etc., are themselves appearances, so they fall to the side of the provisional truth and not the ultimate truth. So if it's not that easy, if it's not merely a matter of meditating on a feeling or concept or an idea. For example, I could tell you that all thoughts arise out of the unity consciousness. Now you could understand that conceptually, and you can meditate on that idea, but that's not meditating on understanding the true nature of reality itself. That is what we call meditating on a concept. However profound that concept may be, it's something that we have borrowed from another. A teacher tells us that everything arises out of the unity consciousness, but the problem is we haven't identified what this unity consciousness is. So I have to say at this point that the Buddhists don't accept the existence of a unity consciousness. We see it to be a mere conceptual imputation, just like the idea of a self. So many people claim that the ultimate experience is the experience of I am, or the experience of a self. But in Buddhism, we say that this experience of a self is a conceptual imputation. It's merely something that we impute upon the aggregates, or these agglomerations of feelings and form, etc. So the question is, how do we meditate on insight? Well, in order to meditate on insight, first we have to gain insight. We have to come to understand. And that's the purpose of study. Now, there's many different types of study. It's not just looking at things in old books. As I've said before many times, the other branch of study is studying mind itself, or studying appearances, right? How thoughts arise, how they change, how they abide, etc. But this is something that really has to be done under the guidance of a teacher. And why is that? It's because you need somebody who has experience. You need somebody who already has this insight, correct your misunderstandings. Now, trying to do it on your own is really difficult, because when you do it on your own, then you read texts, you read sutras, etc. This proclamation of the Buddha, profound and peaceful, free from elaboration, luminous clarity, and uncompounded. Now, if we just read that sentence, it's very difficult for us to identify what that is in the mind or within the phenomena that arises to mind. And as I've said many times before, what we tend to do is we take one of these things, let's say luminous clarity, we sit down in our meditation, and then we go looking for that. Now the mind, not being able to find this thing called luminous clarity, then starts to fabricate an experience of luminous clarity. So there are many sensations, feelings that we experience in meditation, and also we have a very vivid imagination, right? You can kind of imagine all kinds of things. So when you hear these words, then it's very easy to imagine some kind of light, some kind of pure white light, or some kind of experience of liquid luminosity. And when you fabricate that, then you can cling to that as being something real, and it becomes your meditative object. Now, is that necessarily a dangerous thing? No, because let's say I fabricate a kind of liquid luminosity in my mind. I kind of imagine this fluid and very clear kind of bright luminosity in my mind. We can imagine these sort of things, just like we can imagine a star in the sky. And then I cling to that as my meditation object. And then with great diligence, I focus on that year after year in my meditation. Well, that will actually develop my placement meditation, right? If I were to use a candle, or if I were to use this kind of imagined object of luminous clarity, there's no significant difference when it comes to meditation. In fact, an imagined object is harder to focus on. So you will develop quite a lot of skill in your meditation if you focus on a mentally constructed object, like some kind of visualization or some kind of imagined object. And so it has its upsides, it has its positive sides. It can help to still the mind and to create greater acuity in the mind. So this ability to focus, this strength of mind, we say. The problem here is if you cling to that as being ultimate. And this is what most people do. They kind of get fed up. They get tired of not finding their object of meditation, they get fed up with not understanding the true nature of reality and kind of not being able to accept their failure, then they fabricate something. And then they cling to that as being something really special and something really authentic. And that's where the danger lies. Because if you cling to that, then you will grow averse to other things. For example, let's say I meditate and I get this feeling of bliss arising in meditation, which is quite common, right? And then I tell myself that that bliss is the ultimate thing. This is the bee's knees. This is the ultimate object of meditation, and I cling to that. Then what can happen is, if something comes along to upset that feeling of peace and quiet and stillness, it can be irritating, right? Because it's contradictory to this position that I've held, that all appearances are essentially bliss. That in itself is not the true meaning of all phenomena are appearance emptiness, all phenomena are bliss emptiness. Because we cling to our own notion of happiness and well-being, our feeling of joy and bliss, the sort of thing we get from, narcotics or from sexual pleasure. We have this sort of bliss that arises in our mind. But that itself is an appearance, as I said before. That is not the ultimate nature of reality. It is a mere appearance. And if the ultimate nature of all reality was a specific appearance, that means that would be unchanging. It would only be that specific sensation, feeling, or appearance that arises. And as we can see, that's not the case. Sometimes we feel pain, sometimes we feel sorrow, sometimes we feel peace and bliss, sometimes we feel very indifferent and neutral. We have these different sensations that arise to mind, and none of those can be the ultimate nature of mind because they're ephemeral and changing. There's something else you're looking for when you gain insight. And as I said, the way to go about that is to rely on a teacher. If we try to do these things on our own, then more often than not, we're going to get led astray because we'll read all kinds of fancy sounding words and not understanding them, fabricate what is basically a conceptual understanding. And this insight is not a conceptual understanding. So this process of coming to gain insight is called the search for mind, the quest for mind, or mind instructions. So you could say, well, what is mind? Or where is mind? And then you could look in a book and read some words. Mind is nothing other than the present moment of awareness. This is what it teaches. This is what it teaches in the text. So then we could think, well, Eckhart Tolle was right in the first place. It's merely the present moment of awareness. It's presence. That's what I'm looking for. Now, if that in itself was equal to insight, then insight would be very easy. And this point is not as simple as it seems. Are we able, one, to rest in the present moment of awareness? And two, do we understand what that is? For example, we say, well, the quest for mind. What is mind? Where is mind? Mind is nothing other than the present moment of awareness. Now, the next question is, well, what is awareness? So you see here that we have a notion that we understand something called mind. And if you say, well, what is mind? Mind is awareness. Now, all we've done is we've used another word for something that we don't understand. And then if you look into the topic, then it becomes quite difficult. There are questions like, well, what is awareness? Is awareness merely the objects that arise to consciousness? And further, other people will ask, well, what is aware of consciousness itself? So then we have to look for something called self-awareness. And in this way, we can spend years and years and years just going around in a circle, going from one term to another. Consciousness, mind, awareness, luminosity. These things, these terms, don't really help us to gain insight. What we need is we need to identify what this awareness is. For example, I could say to you, well, where is mind? Is it in the brain? Or does mind pervade the body? Or does mind pervade all experiences? Also, some people claim that what you need to do is you need to get rid of mind. You need to go beyond mind. You need to stop mind. It's not really as simple as we make it sound. So this placing the mind in the present moment is a beginner level of meditation. This is sort of the beginner meditation of the beginner meditation, really. What you're telling somebody to do is not to be distracted. Now, you can use a candle to do that. You can say, focus on this candle and don't let yourself be distracted. Or you can say, just remain in the present moment and don't let yourself be distracted. Let's say our teacher tells us to rest in the present moment of awareness. Okay? So you're meditating and you're remaining in the present moment of awareness. And then you start thinking about something that happened yesterday. Let's say I start thinking about climbing the tree the other day. And then the teacher says, are you resting in the present moment of awareness? And I say, oh, sorry, I was thinking about cutting a tree down the other day. Now, this thinking about cutting a tree down the other day, is that happening in the present moment, or is that happening the other day? Well, we can see very clearly there that that is happening now. Whatever I'm thinking about it now. I'm not thinking about it yesterday. What I was thinking about yesterday is something totally different, right? So what this shows is we don't even understand what it means to rest in the present moment. Because whether I think about yesterday or whether I think about what I have to do later on today, that's all happening in the present moment. So then you could ask, well, can I just think about anything? Does it not matter then, if everything's the present moment? And someone might answer, for example, well, no, because you're distracted, right? You're letting your mind wander off and you don't even know what you're thinking about. You know, you're getting distracted. How can that be meditation? But it is the case that that distraction is happening in the present moment. So what we can see here is we don't understand these words. Mind is nothing other than the present moment of awareness, or what it means to rest in the present moment. Because when we say rest in the present moment, we're saying don't get distracted by other thoughts. So this opens up an entirely different topic. Okay, so it's not about whether or not you're in the present moment, because whatever you think about, you are in the present moment. It's about whether or not thoughts are arising. Based on this, then many people come to the conclusion that your task in meditation is to stop thought. So we've changed the topic now. We're no longer talking about presence, etc. We're talking about removing thought. And then there's lots of techniques that people use to remove thought. Okay, let's say the true nature phenomena, our goal in meditation is to remove all thought. So, if non-thought is the true nature phenomena, does that mean that thinking is not included within phenomena? Because when we are thinking, there is thought. There isn't non-thought. So how can non-thought itself be the nature of everything? Also, if our goal in meditation is non-thought, then why don't you just bang yourself on the head? Or take some kind of general anesthetic that will knock you unconscious for a while. If our ultimate meditation is non-thought, then that means the state of deep sleep itself is the best kind of meditation. In fact, better than deep sleep, then an inanimate object like a stone or a stick is a better meditator than I am, because a stone or a stick has no thought whatsoever, ever. It only ever has non-thought. It never has thought. So what this is illustrating is that we don't understand meditation. We don't understand mind. We don't understand how these words of the Buddha apply to all phenomena. So this next line in this Lalita Vistara Sutra is, I have found a nectar-like Dharma, yet if I were to teach it, no one would understand, so I shall remain silent here in the forest. So these are very famous words, right? We hear that the Buddha achieved enlightenment, and upon achieving enlightenment, realized that this is not something that could be communicated to others. And if that's the case, and a being like the Buddha who was enlightened, and not only that, before he was enlightened, then he was an incredibly intelligent individual and very capable, is not able to explain this to anybody, then it's not merely the case of hearing a few words. For example, you are already Buddha, or what is meditation? Meditation is profound peace, etc. These words are what is called the provisional truth. In order to come to understand the true nature of phenomena, then we need signposts, we need analogies, we need metaphors. And because of that, then we have many, many, many volumes of text. that talk about enlightenment, meditation, the attainment, and the qualities that come along with enlightenment in very great detail. And most of it is stories and metaphors, numerical comparisons, analogies. I mean, we're looking for this Buddha nature, right? So they talk about the Buddha nature in all kinds of different analogies, like as if it was a golden statue wrapped up in a filthy rag. Right? This is one of the analogies. So by that do we take it that basically we are Buddha, but we have to remove this outer casing. Let's say this outer filthy casing is our thoughts. That's one interpretation. There's a lot of debate about what all these different analogies mean, and not everyone agrees. In fact, there are many different schools of Buddhism because, basically, they have different ways of interpreting these texts. The importance of the scripture is to allow us to come closer to understanding, conceptually understanding, what meditation means, or what the true nature of phenomena is. And then when we get to a point where we're very close to having a conceptual understanding of that, and it's possible to make this leap through into having actual experience. And based on having actual experience, then we can develop realization, which is a stabilized experience. And this is the process. So it means to some degree, we all need the progressive path. So they talk about Dharma, right? We've got this thing we call Dharma. Well, what is Dharma? It has many different translations. One is merely phenomena. All noble phenomena are Dharma. That's one translation. Also, we use the term Dharma to refer to religion. So there's Christian Dharma, there's Hindu Dharma, there's Buddha Dharma. It means the religion or the tradition. But in terms of the Buddha Dharma, then there are two types. There's the Dharma of the scriptures, and there's the Dharma of realization. There's these two branches. And the Dharma of realization is that which abides in the minds of realized beings. So noble beings have this insight we were talking about. And this insight itself is the Dharma. And the Dharma of the scriptures are all the various words that explain this Dharma that abides in the minds of realized beings. And both of these paths, both of these transmissions need to survive or persist. For example, if we only had the scriptures, but there were no people who realized the meaning of that, who had insight, then that would mean that the Dharma was finished. And likewise, if there was only the realization in the mind of a Buddha, if there were no words or scriptures to express that realization, then the Dharma also could not persist. There would be no transmission. So both are needed. But of these two, then realization is more important. And why do people disagree a lot on the different words in the Dharma? That's because there's very few people with realization of the actual meaning. The person who realizes the meaning may or may not be able to express that clearly to others. And this is largely based on their aspirations and their previous karma. And so, for example, Pratyeka Buddhas, then they have this realization, but they don't teach others. They merely abide in their realization. So unfortunately, what does this mean? Well, it means that you have to engage in the progressive path. And part of that engaging the progressive path is doing a lot of placement meditation. Well, there's different reasons for doing placement meditation. It can kind of be subsumed into this category of contemplation. That's one thing. You need to contemplate the meaning. You need to do it a lot. For example, if you wanted to understand the point that Roger Penrose is making about orchestrated objective reduction, then you'd have to study a lot, right? But eventually, after studying, then you'd start to get an idea of what was being talked about. And it's the same in the Buddha Dharma. The simple concept of peace itself can be explained in thousands and millions of words. In fact, if you look at all the various different traditions, whether that be Christianity or Hinduism or Buddhism, then they have many, many volumes of text that talk about this sublime peace or joy or love, you could say. And basically, if you want to do everything you can to avoid having to go through any hardship and study, whether that be the study of the scriptures or the study of mind itself, or just studying at the feet of your teacher, then you have very little avenue to progress on the spiritual path. It doesn't mean that you can't experience psychological transformations, but you're going to have a really hard time. If you're lazy and if you're averse to the progressive path, then you're going to find it extremely difficult. Those who don't find it difficult are the ones that have built up lifetime after lifetime strong habituation towards the wisdom of the Dharma. And those beings then incarnate in this life as special individuals with special powers and a special inclination. For example, from a young age, then they will go off into the wilderness and spontaneously meditate. So we're not really like that. We were born in the world with a lot of luxury. I'm talking about Westerners and people in developed nations like China. We've got a lot of kind of comfort, a lot of luxury. We're very wealthy compared to most of the world. And this is not necessarily because of having developed spiritual experience in previous lives. In fact, this comes from having practiced generosity. And so it's not necessarily the case that just because you've had good karma to be born in the wealthy West, that you're going to have kind of spiritual knowledge. In fact, I'd say it was almost the opposite of that. These people born in the high Himalaya mountains who spent all their time in the wilderness and don't have a Western education probably have a greater habituation to the spiritual path than we do, because their lives are very simple and uncomplicated, and they have little distraction from all this sort of material wealth that we experience in the West. And it is a huge distraction. I mean, every time you turn on the television, they're trying to sell you something, and advertising is everywhere, you know. It's like we can't live without 20 different types of food to eat, and without iPhones and televisions and electric kettles and that sort of thing. You know, Chato Rinpoche had a stick with a little bag on his back, you know, and he would carry a little bit of tsampa flour, maybe, or a bit of butter with him. You know, he didn't have electrical goods. He didn't have iPads and things like that. He had one set of clothing, a little bag, and he went off into the wilderness. And he's the sort of person that achieves awakening and insight in this lifetime. But you can't fake it. You can't just sort of give everything away to your teacher and then disappear into the mountain, try to pretend like you're a yogi who's been practicing the Dharma path for countless lifetimes. You've got to take it slowly, step by step. And also, there's no point in being impatient. There's no point in thinking, like, I've only got one lifetime. If I don't achieve it now, I've got no hope. It's not like that. It's about habituation. That's the most important thing. And to habituate yourself to something takes some effort. But more than that, it's breaking down negative habituation. If you have negative habits, for example, if you smoke, then it's not easy to give that up. It's quite easy to develop negative habits, but it's very difficult to give up negative habits. And likewise, it's very difficult to develop positive habits. Let's say you sleep in normally till 10 o'clock every morning. You start going to the Zen center and you start thinking, well, it'd be great if I could get up early and meditate. But to break that habit of sleeping in isn't easy. It takes effort. And at first, you feel really rotten and really tired throughout the day because you're not used to it. But with diligence and sort of tolerance, forbearance, then you will be able to eventually get up as early as you like, even 3 in the morning if you want to. But it takes a sort of strong intention, a strong mindset and diligence to do that. And it's the same in the Buddha Dharma. It's the same with anything. If you wanted to compete in a triathlon, then it would take a lot of work, right? Especially if you're an old guy like me. And it's like that. And it's taught that the spiritual path is the most difficult path. I mean, it's fine saying that it's all sort of spontaneously arising and there's nothing to do. But it's not the case that ordinary beings like us can just, you know, fall sway to our negative emotions and sit there, you know, eating pizza and watching videos on YouTube and become enlightened. That's kind of foolish. That's laughable to think that. People who are able to rest naturally in the unborn state are quite exceptional individuals. If we look at Bankei, this Zen master that Westerners love to quote, then from a very young age, he went off into hermitage and spent all his time meditating. So he was an exceptional individual, right? He already started off at a much higher level than we did. And even so, then he had a lot of obstacles on the path. He even thought he became enlightened after many years, and then only to realize that he still had some progress to make. So if he was like that, then what's the basis for saying that I can just be lazy, right? If a special individual like Bankei had to put in so much effort to come to realize the unborn, then why would it be that I can just sit here and do nothing and it's going to fall into my lap, fall out of the sky? That's just a crazy way of thinking. Not only that, the Buddha was taught to be the most exceptional type of individual in terms of intelligence and also in physical fitness. And the Buddha really went for it, 6 years sitting outside under a tree with only 1 grain of rice to eat a day is not something that the average individual can do. What it is taught is that the Buddha, over countless lifetimes, accumulated vast stores of merit. And not only that, over countless lifetimes, the Buddha relied on bodhisattvas and sublime teachers. But don't get disheartened, because basically you should never overlook a single virtue. All virtue that you dedicate yourself to will accumulate and become a support for your practice. And as long as you're going up, that's fine. We just want to keep improving. So be diligent. Don't become disheartened. It is the case that in essence you are Buddha. And so because of that, then you have something to look forward to. And you should have great hope and joy. Now, thank you for listening, and see you again next time.